afternoon, folks. I stand here before you having to talk about Jonathan Dukes and what a terrible mistake you made. And I told you that from the beginning. I told you that throughout the trial. And I told you that if that is something that Jonathan knows in his heart.
Objection, Your Honor. No evidence.
Knows in his heart. And he's told you through the conversations that that Lieutenant Johnson played for you. He's told you through me when I got up in the very beginning and said he participated in that robbery, and he knows that he did, and we're not asking you to find him not guilty of that offense. If you listen to the recording, if you listen to the digital recording of that Lieutenant Johnson played for you, he, from that very first day, that first time when he was brought in, he didn't, in that first hour where he's just being arrested, he wasn't forthcoming. But that same day, that very same day, he called Lieutenant Johnson back and said, let me talk to you again. Let me tell you what happened. And as Lieutenant Johnson said, not only was he consistent all the way through, that what he told him that very first day was corroborated by what the other witnesses said, what the other witnesses ultimately said, and what the evidence showed. And I'm going to tell you again, as I told you in the beginning, that he participated in that robbery. And then you'll look at the elements. I've seen them, and the judge is going to give them to you, and you'll make the decision whether they're the same charge or which one applies to Jonathan Dukes. And then make the decision. And he knows that he's got to pay the consequences for making that stupid decision. And what kind of person is Jonathan? You heard a little bit about that too. You heard about that from the very beginning when that he was a good student, and in fact when Mrs. The teacher said he was a good student. You heard it from the stand when Mrs. Drake said, Jonathan played basketball with my son. Yeah. You've seen him on and off throughout that time? Absolutely. Nice, polite young man. When I asked her that question, she broke out into a smile, remembering how nice Jonathan was. You heard Bobby, his mother, said, Jonathan's the one I want you to hang out with. And he makes one stupid decision, and he has ruined his life. And what he feels bad about is exactly what he said on that tape, exactly what he said on that recording. He feels so bad for what happened to Mr. Lowther. He participated in it. He isn't the one that actually hurt him, but he didn't do anything to help. He didn't just say, oh yeah, I'm sorry. He said, look, I was there and I didn't do anything to help. He recognizes he's done something wrong. He recognizes you're going to find him guilty of a robbery or a burglary. He understands that, and nobody's asking you to do anything different. But that was the testimony of Jonathan Dukes, and I think that a lot of things became very clear about Jonathan Dukes in terms of not only that what I was telling you about his background that you heard, but also in terms of his involvement here. Mr. Riccardi gets up and says, well, there's no question he's the one that hurt the neck because of what Mr. Lowther said. But there really isn't any question about that. He is not the one that hurt Mr. Lowther. Mr. Lowther said in a statement from the nurse that came here, she said, the guy that followed me in, the guy that followed Jody Fetty in is the guy that grabbed me and threw me on the ground. And then when he did that, he kneeled on me or sat on me or something, and that's what happened. It was the guy that followed Jody Fetty in. And who was that guy? Cortez Oliver. There's no question about it. Jody Fetty testified to that fact. Cortez Oliver was telling everybody he did that. What was the first thing Jody Fetty said when she got in the car? Cortez Oliver really hurt that guy. What was the first thing Cortez Oliver said? Boy, I debowed that guy. I took that guy. I debowed him. Took him right to the ground. Cortez Oliver said that. Everybody involved said Cortez Oliver said that. But let's look at the planning too, which was not just Cortez Oliver, but apparently his boss, who had this grand idea of going into this house and trying to talk some other people into going into the house as well. Well, Jonathan among them. At first, he didn't want to. He was hesitant. He said no. As the night went on, his judgment became impaired, and there's no question. And by the way, his judgment that night is he's responsible for, and I want you to think otherwise. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be. I'm not changing what I'm telling you about the aggravated burglary and the aggravated robbery, and I'm not changing my mind about or trying to suggest something different than what I'm telling you about in terms of looking at those elements and finding him guilty of whichever charge you think applies. But he didn't do it. He did it. At first he said no. That's why he went out and asked Bobby to be the lookout, because Jonathan didn't want to do it. Then he says, okay, I'll go. And it's painted as such, a no problem thing. I'll give you a lot of money, and all you got to do is stand in the driveway and let me know if the neighbor wakes up. Then on the way out, he's hesitant. Jody says he was hesitant. Cortez is calling him a bitch because he doesn't want to do it. He's acting like he doesn't want to do it, and he's calling him a bitch. When they got out of the car the second time, he didn't get right out. He was hesitant to get out. They said to him, come on, you got to look out. When they got back in the car, what does Cortez Oliver say? You bitch, you didn't do anything. And of course, he did get blood on his hand when Mr. Lawler's nose was bleeding, and so when Jonathan went to put his hand over his mouth and Mr. Lawler pushed him away, he got some blood. So when Cortez is telling him he's a bitch and he didn't do anything, because Cortez knows that he's the one that hurt Mr. Lawler. And he knows when he did it, Jonathan was not inside the house. He says, no, I do have blood on my hand. So, but that's what it was in relation to. He said that the very first day he was arrested. It remained consistent throughout the statements, and it's consistent with what everybody else said, particularly everybody, including Cortez, that said Cortez is the one that hurt him. What Mr. Lawler says is the man that followed Jody in behind, and Jody was very clear about that. Jonathan was down the road. But Cortez and I was right behind me when I went in. Does that have anything to do with the fact that he participated in the robbery? No. And again, you're going to find him guilty. There's no question about that. He participated in it, but he is not the man that hurt Mr. Lawler. He is not the man that debowed him or broke his neck or threw him on the ground and then kneeled on him. That was Cortez, and Cortez told everybody it was him. Jody told everybody it was him. Darryl Dukes heard that it was him. That's what Cortez says. You know, when he first came in, and he called Lieutenant Johnson and said, look, I wasn't really forthcoming when you first arrested me there, but now it's a couple of hours later, I've been sitting here and I realize the enormity of what I did, and I want you to come get me so I can tell you what happened. He did this even though Lieutenant Johnson had just told him that with a robbery charge, a robbery or burglary, I don't remember exactly what he said, but you'll use your recollections to remember that, and the felonious assault, you're facing 20 years, and he still called him and said, I need to tell you what happened here. And what happened here is I participated in this robbery, and it was wrong, and I feel horrible, and I know what you're telling me I'm facing, and I'm telling you that anyway.